This is Attorney Anthony Wright of the Wright Law Offices here in Henderson, Nevada. Today I want to discuss the topic of child abuse as it relates to child custody battles in family court. If you're a parent and you suspect your child is being abused by the other parent, and that could be physically, perhaps corporal punishment where marks are being left. It could be negligently. Maybe the child is not in a safe environment. Maybe there's guns being left out or other weapons. The child doesn't have proper safety belts or child restraint seats in the car, or any number of issues. It could be sexual molestation. It could be, if the child is young, being left completely alone at the other parent's house for extended periods of time. If you suspect these things are going on, the question is, should you report it to Child Protective Services or the police? Well, the answer depends on whether your suspicions are reasonable, and perhaps you should ask a lawyer to determine whether a reasonable person in your situation would deem your child at risk. If there are articulable reasons for believing this, perhaps your child has said something to you, or you've seen marks on your child, or your child's behavior has changed recently. If something of that nature has occurred, then yes, perhaps CPS or the police or both should be contacted, regardless of whether you have a case going on or not. Now, if you do have a child custody case going on and you notice these things, you run the risk of not being believed because you have a motive. Your motive is to get the other parent to look bad so that you can get the upper hand in family court. And that's always a huge risk. It's understood that some parents will go to those lengths of accusing the other parent of terrible acts in order to get the upper hand. So if you're the reporting parent, you've got to be careful. Now, if you do have fairly good evidence or reason to suspect abuse, do you have a duty under the law to report? The answer is yes. Well, let me explain. There was a Sharice Iverson Act many years ago, came into existence because little Sharice Iverson was raped and brutally murdered in a men's bathroom at State Line near the California-Nevada border. The fellow that raped this little girl, of course, was incarcerated, but his friend knew what was going on, knew that the little girl was being brutally raped and murdered, or at least something criminal was going on. And that friend did absolutely nothing, did not report it, did not try to stop it or anything. So as a result of that, the Sharice Iverson Act came into existence to punish and to impose duties on people who know that a child is suffering. You have a special duty as a parent to protect your child. So if you believe and have reasonable evidence to suspect your child is being abused, you have a duty to protect that child. And that duty transcends even your fear that you might not be believed. It is not your job to investigate those claims. It is the job of the police or the CPS caseworkers and other investigators to prove that. In fact, it's not necessarily your job to prove it in the court of law in your child custody case that the child was being abused. If the child was abused, then the investigators will find something, hopefully, and it will be used in your case. If the child was abused but the investigators could not substantiate the abuse, that doesn't mean that the abuse didn't happen. It just means that they couldn't find enough evidence to really blame the other parent for the abuse. And yeah, you may not be believed. It may be determined that you might have an ulterior motive for reporting something that wasn't substantiated, but you still have to do it because you have to ultimately protect your child no matter what, even if it hurts you. I mean, that's the role of a parent. And if you have a good counsel at trial explaining to the judge this situation, I think any reasonable jurist, any judge presiding over any case is going to understand that you called the proper authorities to investigate because you had suspicion. So again, I absolutely believe that you should report if you believe any number of crimes are being committed against your child by anybody. If you don't, you could be responsible. You could end up going to jail for allowing the child to be in that unsafe environment. And if the only time you bring it up is in a child custody case and you didn't report it to anyone else like you should have, then it really will look like you're just using it to try to get the upper hand in family court and didn't really care about the child's safety, or you would have reported it to the appropriate agencies. So that's what I think about whether or not you should report child abuse, regardless of if you have a child support or child custody case going on, and regardless of how it might make you look to a judge. Absolutely, you should report it. It's not your job to investigate. If you have good suspicions, let the authorities do it.